Welcome to the Animals of Australia presentation that kicks off the Oceania semester at Missouri Southern, and we're very pleased that Nancy and Candy from Dickerson Park Zoo in Springfield are here with 4 of their creatures to do a little talk and Q&A, so we appreciate them making the trip over here with their animals. Something new with the Oceania semester, we are conducting a survey of each event that you attend, and if you have the little booklet, the brochure, there's some outside, but at the end of each presentation, there's a QR code and also a URL. You can access the survey either way. But every time you take the survey following an event, you're entered into a drawing for a $1,000 study abroad grant. So this would be in addition to any other study abroad grants that you would already qualify for. So normally students who go on a trip get a $1,000 grant. If you win the drawing, then you can get $2,000. So I'm going to give you the event code if you want to take the survey after the presentation. You can't do it now, it won't let you. And you wouldn't want to do it now because you haven't seen anything yet, but it's 1175, 1175. And again, you can get the QR code or the URL in this brochure afterwards. So I don't want to take any time away from Candy and Nancy, who are here to talk to us about their special creatures. And so I'll give, well, Candy's already mic'd up, and I'll give this one to Nancy.
Yes, I'm going to go first. All right. Is it on? There you go. All right. Thank you for having us today. We come from Springfield Dickerson Park Zoo, and we are in the education department. These animals that we have are not an exhibit. So these animals are taken out all over Missouri. That we go lots of different places with them. So they're used to being around people. So the first one to do is the bird I have up here. This is Professor Elliott. He's a sulphur-crested cockatoo. Step up. Step up. Come on. Okay. We're not going to behave like we need to. Step up. Come on. He does talk. He is 11 years old. He is not a bird you want to have as a pet. This guy will live to be 80 years old. And he is very demanding. If you notice, I have these toy thing that was up here a while ago. He was pulling them off and dropping them on the ground and then looking at me because he wanted me to pick them back up. He's very intelligent. He does talk, but I can't make him talk unless he wants to. And he has probably about 25 words that he could say. Sometimes when we get in the car, he talks to us all the way up here, but when he sees people and stuff, sometimes he gets bashful. And then other times he may talk. But we're going to leave him out when I have him up here. He's a sulphur-crested cockatoo because of this coloring on his crest. He also has yellow that's on the side of his head. That's where his ears are at. So they don't have ears like we do, they just have holes. And so the feathers that grow around it then actually tunnel the sound and stuff in so that for his hearing. He also has yellow under his wings. His wings have been clipped so that he does not fly, and he has them on his tail feathers. Now, males and females all look alike. A lot of times in the bird world, different birds, male will have a different color ring around their eyes. In this particular breed, they're all white, and they all have then the big black eye. He will live in the rainforest. He's a grain eater, so he will come in big flocks, and they can actually strip a grain field very, very quickly. They are also very destructive as far as eating a lot of the furniture and stuff on people's back porches, if they're made of wicker. So in Australia, they're not the best thing that they like around there, but they will live in a flock of 25 to 100. And at times, when they're feeding, there'll be 2 of them up in the trees, and they're actually the scouts, and then they will warn the other ones that are on the ground if something is coming after them. They have very high pitch. So he gets mad at us if we don't pay a lot of attention to him, and he will then hit this high pitch. So we have to cover him up, and we put him in timeout. And that's, otherwise, if we would engage with him when he makes that high pitch, then he would keep doing it. So He's just like a child, especially at 11 years old. All right, can you talk? Can you say anything? Nope. We know that he was raised in captivity. He was not a captured bird because he has a red band that was put on his foot when he was born, and that lets us know that he was raised in captivity. It is illegal for you now to get them out of Australia, but they are still being captured and sold in pet stores. So if you're wanting a bird like this and you want to have him around and you're going to plan on 80 years old, make sure that he has one of those red bands on their feet to know that they were actually, I know, that they were raised in captivity. So, can you show your crest? Oh, woohoo. Hi, Professor. Yes, I heard you then. Can you say something? What do you do? Okay. To bathe, he has this white dust that he produces on his body, so he doesn't need to get in water and bathe like other birds do in a bird bath type thing. So that dust actually keeps him clean, and he prunes himself. So I'm going to leave him out, and I will let him show off. He may not talk, but you can kind of see what he does. Is there any questions about it? Yes?
How many did you say that weren't up walking around?
They can do between 25 to 100. So it depends on how big that they can get. But that's why they are so disturbed, because they're in a big flock. I had a friend that went to Australia last summer, and he said that pictures, there were 5 birds that were pecking on a car that had come in. So they're around in the city and everywhere else. So, but this is Professor Elliott. We actually got him because a lady had 100 birds and she passed away and didn't have plans of where these birds were going to go. He was a therapy bird, so she took him into the hospitals and those type of things. So he's been used to being around people. And so, yes?
How old did you say you were?
He is 11. So we've had him for about 3 years and stuff, so but he will live to be 80. So, yes?
So if it's illegal to catch them in the wild, is it illegal to own them?
No, because if they've had the band on them, they know that they've been they've been a captive bird, not, from captivity, not taken out of the wild. But they can't do the trading of them to bring them to the United States. But you can buy them in the pet store. Yeah, they're in the pet store for sale. Yeah. So, yes?
So is that bird found in the wild only in Australia?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. All right, let's do another one. Okay, Nancy, it's your turn.
And is this on? Can everyone? Well, I'm Nancy Weiser, and I'm a docent for Dickerson Park Zoo, which means I'm a volunteer. I'm a retired school teacher from Springfield, Missouri. Taught kindergarten most of my career, and I teach part-time now at Missouri University, working with other animals called student teachers. So if any of you are in the education department, I'm also working with them as well. But the animal you see Candy holding here is Herman. And Herman is, and he just showed it off there, a blue-tongued skink. Now, if you're native to Missouri, you know we have blue-tailed skinks in Missouri. And if you've been ever lucky enough to come across one and catch it, one of their defense mechanisms is to drop their tail to get away from you. And so you reach to grab them, and there will be a little wiggling piece there, and it's the tail, which they will regenerate and grow back. Herman has a very long, thick tail, but the blue-tongued skink that is native to Australia does not have the ability to do that. He's not going to drop his tail. Blue-tongued skinks are very shy creatures, and you often won't see them. They like to hide away. But if they encounter something and they get very frightened, their defense mechanism isn't to drop their tail, but they can open their mouth very wide, revealing a very pink interior, And then that dark blue tongue, they'll stick it out, which is intended to frighten away any type of predator that's going to grab them. And there are all kinds of things in Australia that would like to eat a delectable, tasty reptile. And you can see that Herman here has grown very robust, living at the zoo and being cared for quite well. Blue-tongued skinks are ovoviviparous, and ovoviviparous means as reptiles do, they lay eggs. Most reptiles will build somewhat of a nest and lay the eggs in the nest, but an ovoviviparous reptile will retain the eggs in the body where they hatch, and then it appears as if they're giving live birth, which those of us who know that that's very unique to mammals, not reptiles. But it's a device that they use to preserve their kind, and it appears that way, but actually they're just retaining the eggs inside the female body. They can produce up to 20 babies at a time, and that's another characteristic quite true of reptiles a lot, is they produce a lot of offspring because there's a lot of predators that like to eat them. So they have to multiply in a grand fashion in order to preserve their kind. The other thing I think is quite unique about this skink is, as Candy's passing them around, notice the scales, which is another characteristic of reptiles. They're covered in scales, but the scales on this skink are very smooth, almost skin-like, in a way looking like a salamander because they're osteoderms. Each scale is considered an osteoderm, and it's almost a smooth, glass-like, shiny appearance on his body, looking almost like a textured skin, rather than the other reptile I'm going to show you later will have very pronounced rough scales, and to compare the two of them. I'll stop now and are there any questions about Herman, our blue-tongued skink, that you're curious about? Yes?
Do you know if Herman is an Eastern or Northern?
Candy, do we know if Herman's Eastern or Northern?
No, I do not.
Both of them were donated, both of the reptiles we're going to show, so that another thing that's really difficult to share, a little interesting story, the other blue-tongued skink we were going to bring is Buddy, and we thought both of them were males until recently. Buddy appears to be laying eggs, and so, and I'm sure in your studies you know that it's very difficult often to sex a reptile to another sex without a blood test, and we haven't done that. So it's quite possible, I suppose, that Herman might turn out to be a female rather than a male, but we both put them in that gender randomly, yeah, maybe based on their appearance and their face. But so we don't always, a lot of our educational animals come to us by a donation, or they've been had an injury or some sort of situation where they need to find another home, and so we don't always know everything about them. Do you have could you teach me about that? Is there a characteristic that might separate them that after you've looked at it?
Usually coloration and the bands on the side.
So do you have with those bands? Or?
But he has the great coloration, so it's the right color.
I'll continue to investigate that. Thank you. Quite often during the presentations, I learn a lot from you all asking questions and sharing.
Also with gender, if you look in your cage, males usually release sperm plugs in the water or just around the cage, so that then it's a good indication that they're a male.
Okay, and I will remember that as well. That Buddy, actually the eggs that they're not quite formed, and and Buddy's eating them. See, now I'm hesitant about calling them Buddy. Yeah.
If they're like really limited and like stringy, then it's probably
Okay. So look.
Yeah, and if you look at their head sizes, typically females have a narrower head, and males have more of a broader head.
Okay. So do you think Herman is still a male after you?
It's hard to see.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that. Are there any other questions? Well, I will Thank you so much, you taught me. Any other questions about Herman? Yes.
So you said that he's a pretty large one, right?
Yeah, you know, with a lot of reptiles, they continue to grow their whole life. And when you consider an animal in the environment in which he's in, he's got a full-time vet taking care of him, a proper diet, doesn't have to worry about any type of predation. So, yeah, they'll continue to grow and grow. They're slow growing though. We got a desert tortoise that was donated to us that's begun to just really take off in her growth right now. And that's been quite interesting to see how rapidly she can grow. And we like to take her out and talk to her about pet ownership. Because when those tortoises are bought, they're very small and very manageable, but they grow so rapidly, and she'll eventually reach almost 500 pounds, 400 pounds, you know, depending, you know, that maximum, so that becomes a real problem. But, yeah, and a lifespan on a blue tongue is about 20 years in captivity, so, and that's another time commitment, not as long as Professor, but.
Do you know how old he is?
Do we know?
I think he's 8, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly. He'll live to be like 15 in the zoo, 15 to 20. What's kind of cool about him at the skink is they eat bugs. So in Australia, they love having these in their garden and around their houses because they'll go underneath the plants and eat all the bugs and stuff that they have. So,
But they're still considered omnivores.
Oh, he says
He's going to go under
He says,
there.
I'm a little cold. He is cold-blooded, so it is cooler in here, so he's looking for warmth and stuff. But he's not slimy, as you would think. What I think he feels like is a little linoleum, you know, countertop type things, those type of things is kind of what he feels like. And his skin on the top is this structure that's on it that looks like it's like an armor. It's the bone structure that the skin is actually over and stuff. And he does shed. But, yeah. But he's kind of a cool guy. And then really, kids love having these guys around. As you see, he's very docile. They can hold him. They can take him out. And he would be happy as he could be just being with people. Yeah.
They're very shy, very gentle.
Yeah.
Is it legal to own one of those?
Yes.
Yes, both of the reptiles we brought are legal. You can walk into a pet store.
Is it the same rule though about like, you can't take them out of captivity, but you can buy it?
With him, I don't know. I don't know with these two, the two we're going to show.
You may
Yeah.
know.
With Australian animals, it's not that it's illegal to take them out of captivity, because they can still in Australia, it's a ban. They can't be imported.
Imported into
Or
the United States.
or animals can't be exported out of Australia.
To kind of interfere with that trade, so that it won't become a problem, I think is the intent.
Okay, you ready for me to do the other one? Go ahead.
The next animal we're going to see, this is Uluru, and you're going to recognize that name if you're familiar with Australia, because that is their famous red rock that probably some of you have visited, and I've not had the pleasure of doing that. And Uluru is a bearded dragon. Now you're going to immediately notice with this reptile that he looks like a dragon. If dragons were real, and I always wish they were, he's got all of those wonderful scaly characteristics of having the spiny parts all the way around his mouth and little tiny spines sticking off of his back, the coloration, the shape of the head. He almost looks ominous. But bearded dragons are very popular right now in the pet trade, as I'm sure all of you are familiar. Could I see a raise of hand if anybody who's ever had a bearded dragon for a pet? And they're quite popular. They're known as the puppies of the reptile world because they are so personable and gentle. And as Candy's passing him around, you can see that Uluru's just reclining there and staying very calm. They're so, both Herman and Uluru are very easy to handle when you're taking them out and talking with them. talking with people and showing them to people. The bearded dragon gets his name from being able to puff out that underneath soft part of the skin and making it look like a beard, which can also be sort of a defense mechanism for them. It can make them look bigger and scarier because, again, being a reptile, they are prey for lots of predators. And he sort of, I've noticed that Ularu's been very sleepy today. When I removed him from his enclosure, he stayed asleep the whole time. I moved him from the enclosure to the container, and he's still asleep. So even though they're considered to be diurnal animals, which means they're awake during the day and sleep at night, for some reason he's really sleepy today. But the bearded dragon, again, they're not an ovoviviparous reptile, but they will lay eggs, and they can lay a clutch of about 20 eggs. Their lifespan is a little shorter than the blue tongues. They live about 9 years in the wild, 12 years in captivity, but can live longer, so that's another reasonable reason to keep them as a pet. What I think is one of the most interesting things about them is they seem to me to really interact with humans, because you can walk up to their cage and they will watch you. And I don't often notice the blue-tongued skink doing that. They will follow you and pay attention to you and interact. Uluru does seem to respond when I talk to him. And it's, to me, I think that's what makes a bearded dragon such an attractive animal for people to have them as pets. They're also an animal that has all those wonderful characteristics of a reptile, which means they're scaled, they're cold-blooded, they don't have that ability to have any kind of an environment where they can survive, so that you have to keep it warm for them. So they're going to need a heated environment. They're going to need a place where they have a constant temperature. I think it would be a lot of fun to be able just to walk out in my yard and see bearded dragons running around like they do in Australia. But that does not happen here because of our temperature and our climate. Are there any questions about the bearded dragon?
What's cool about him too is his eyelid actually from the bottom goes up, not like ours, because they're on the ground. So it's dusty, so their eyelids go the opposite of us. And a lot of times they will stand up if they're in a group and somebody's coming up, and they'll stand up and they'll walk on their 2 hind feet, and they may wave at you.
Or bob.
Yeah. Or bob.
If you've ever seen an anole,
Yeah.
the green anoles that are real common as pets too, they will encounter each other and do that bobbing,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
greeting toward each other.
Yeah.
Once again, another personable characteristic of a bearded dragon. The other part of them that I think is kind of cool too is they pant like a dog. They have that ability to cool their body temperature down, and so they'll pant. They'll open their mouth up, and so that also makes me think they're puppy-like in their behavior. Any other questions about bearded dragon? Yes. Uluru. You want to practice that? Uluru. And that's a very famous land formation in Australia. It's a big red rock that people like to go and visit. Uluru. Any other questions? Is he still asleep?
Yep.
Well, as a docent, what we've been trained to always respond, that's probably the most common question we get regarding any animal we take. Anything with the mouth can bite. Now, I've never ever been fearful or had them even attempt to do that, but if pushed and threatened, any animal, including us, may bite. So, some are more professors, more prone to taking a nip at you. instead of Herman or Uluru. Any other questions? But they're omnivores too, so they will eat a range of bird eggs even if they come across that, or insects. But then they'll also eat a certain amount of vegetation. Like right now in the enclosure at the zoo, there's a lovely salad waiting in a bowl for Uluru, and it looked tasty. So it was a variety of different kinds of leaved vegetables. Do you like your vegetables? Well, that's good to hear. Half of the time. Me too. Any other questions? When everyone has seen Uluru, the next animal we're going to get out is a mammal from Australia. And it is a marsupial,
Still asleep.
but not that famous marsupial you associate with Australia.
We can show that one that's famous.
While you're talking.
Yeah, well, I did. Ready from the other.
So I'm sure you recognize this famous marsupial. Anybody know what this pelt is from? It's from a kangaroo. And I'm going to come around and let you feel it. It's quite luxurious. While Candy is talking about another mammal that is also a marsupial but different than a kangaroo.
Is it on? Yes. Okay. The next animal we're going to is a marsupial also, but it's very small. So it's in a pouch. This is a sugar glider. It doesn't want to come out, no. They're nocturnal. So. Oops, come on. All right, so this is a sugar glider. It's a little hard to just pound it in here. But we know he's nocturnal because of those big eyes that he has. Okay, let's get a little closer here. Okay. He's known for the skin that is attached to his wrist and his ankles so that they can actually jump from tree to tree and they can catch moths in midair. And that's their defense to be able to get away. He's also got a very, very long tail that they use as a rudder to help guide them, and the way that they would actually move that skin between that they glide with can actually help determine their direction that they want to go. They live in a family together, and they will have about 7 actual family members, 7 to 8 family members in there together. They are marsupials, so their mama carries them in a pouch, and the babies are called joeys, just like they are with the kangaroo. They have great eyesight, they have great hearing, and I think I need to put him back in there because he's not going to cooperate too as much. And you notice I had it in a little bag that he actually stays in. They bark, and they will, I'm surprised he didn't squawk at me because he didn't want to get out, but okay, get in there. So at the zoo, we have them in a pouch. There's 3 of them. We have a family that live together. And so he stays in his little pouch. They will eat bugs that, maybe we can see. And after it's over with, you may want to come up and see him. But they're kind of interesting that they do can fly. So they can have those wings that actually are part of their skin and jump from tree to tree. They're very shy. I think, didn't it say that they live about 7 years in the wild and about 10 to 12 in captivity? But think again, in captivity, most animals are going to live longer anyway because they have no predators after them. And they get all the food that they want. And we have a vet that's on staff that actually takes care of them. With Professor, he had his West Nile virus or shot that was given to him on Saturday. So all of our animals actually get medications. We keep them healthy so they live long. This is an example, whenever we get done, you can come up and look, of actually how the skin on the side of their legs and stuff, that actually where they glide across with it. So, is there a question about our sugar glider? Their favorite thing of stuff is anything with sugar in it. That's why they got their name. Yes?
Does he have a name?
This one is, well, really I don't know, because we have 3, and they're all in the same deal. We don't know which one's which. So you can't tell them apart. Yeah, so they all look alike. So really, this one, I have no idea which name it is, which one it is. So, yeah. You can ask the questions, I don't know. I don't know what they are. We had LaRue, used to be the oldest one we had, and she just passed away. And we'd had her for 15 years, so she was an old girl. But these 3, I don't know. I don't know what they've named them. I don't use them very often, so. All right, any other questions with it? Oh, sorry, yes. We do not know, because I don't know which one I got out. We have a mom and dad and a baby, and they're all the same size now. So we don't know which one is which. So, I don't know. Yeah. So, all right, other animals in Australia is something that lays a great big egg. You know, you got the ostrich is Africa, but there's some in there. But you've got an emu. And an emu's egg is green compared to an ostrich egg. This one has been broke, but you can kind of see inside what it is. With the ostrich egg, it is about 24 of our chicken eggs. And you can't eat them. And you can eat you can eat the emu eggs. Lots of people have now gone to, they're raising emus here in the United States, in the Missouri area. They're using it for meat, they're using it for the eggs, and they're also then using it for the oils and stuff that they actually can produce from it. So that is one of the birds that's being used in our area. Yeah. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. I guess that could be all of our program. Thank you for inviting us, and I hope